In 2011, Rango arrived in theaters and completely threw away some popular Disney formulas. It traded clean, singing animals for dusty, ugly lizards and magical shortcuts for absolute chaos. The movie also went on to break some other Disney rules and set some on its own. But what exactly does Rango do that Disney doesn't? The gore of Verbinski. You've probably heard this term before, maybe even on our channel. If you haven't, it simply refers to the unique creative approach and philosophy of the visionary director and screenwriter Gore Verbinski. His style centers around embracing the messy, imperfect, and deeply mysterious aspects of human life. This was the exact DNA that characterized his most famous project, the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. And by the time Gore Verbinski was ready to make his mark on the world of animation, he gave us the grittiest Western cartoon imaginable, one that brilliantly subverts what was normal. This philosophy is one of the very first things that Rango does that Disney doesn't. You see, where it embraces the natural, gritty, and most realistic aspects of life, not caring how ugly or uninteresting it might look, Disney focuses on creating the illusion of life. And it is necessary to tackle this philosophy first because it influences everything that comes after. This deep focus on imperfection and vulnerability is most visually apparent in the character design, which completely rejects the traditional rules of the animation industry. For example, Disney films favor universally appealing, mathematically symmetrical, and highly stylized geometries. Guys like Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston helped define Disney's famous 12 principles of animation through books like The Illusion of Life. A huge part of that philosophy centers around clean silhouettes, readable emotions, smooth movement, and appealing shapes that instantly connect with audiences. In Frozen, Elsa runs across the ocean during Show Yourself, and the entire moment looks polished like glass. Her hair flows perfectly, the lighting sparkles around her, and every movement follows Disney's famous animation principles almost mathematically. Even older movies like Beauty and the Beast operate the same way. During the ballroom dance scene, Belle glides across the floor while the camera sweeps around her with impossible smoothness. Everything exists to create beauty, elegance, and emotional clarity. But then Rango walks into the room looking like he slept inside a shoe. His skin looks dry, one eye is larger than the other, and his shirt sits awkwardly on his body. When we get to the town of Dirt, well, covers almost every surface. The buildings appear half dead. The townspeople are exhausted, and even the sunlight in the movie looks harsh enough to burn your skin. The background characters carry strange little details that make the world seem alive, so you start imagining stories for everybody standing in the crowd. A character like Doc carries a missing ear and tired eyes. Bad Bill drags around massive old spurs with cracked skin hanging off his face. One vulture walks around with a wooden leg, and a mole squints through blindness. Every wrinkle, scar, and missing piece makes the town more grounded. Gore Verbinski understood that Westerns already carry a rough philosophy inside them. Old Westerns usually focus on survival. A town runs out of water, a criminal walks into a saloon, and a sheriff hides fear behind confidence. Greed controls powerful men. Death waits around the corner, and Rango embraces every part of that tradition. The movie opens with a pet chameleon trapped inside a glass tank, talking to toys. Then the tank crashes onto a highway, and suddenly this tiny, confused chameleon ends up stranded in a desert full of predators. Right away, the movie throws away the warm safety net common in animated family films. And the strange part comes from how personal the movie makes all of this. Most animated movies ask a character what they want to become. Moana asks Moana whether she wants to remain on the island or become a voyager. However, Rango asks a much stranger question, which we can only answer later. For now, whether Rango's gritty realism makes it better than a Disney film depends entirely on you as a viewer. What do you prefer? A beautifully engineered, flawless illusion, or something raw, authentic, and unapologetically realistic? Now, funnily enough, another scrappy desert lizard thing follows me off the clock too. There's an app that pays you for things you'd be on your phone doing anyway, like games, surveys, and trying out new apps. It's called Free Cash, and it's the sponsor of today's video. It's got a bunch of games on it, including one called Gecko Out. Over 60 million people use it, and it sits at 4.7 stars on Trustpilot. One thing to know going in, keep app tracking switched on, or it can't credit you for what you finish. You cash out through PayPal, Amazon, or crypto. The first withdrawal opens at $25. Then it's any amount after that. It won't replace a job, but for time that was already gone, you may as well get something for it. Link and QR are below. Use them and you start with a $10 bonus on top. Back to Rango though. Remember the last question I asked you if you prefer a beautifully engineered, flawless illusion or something raw, authentic, and unapologetically realistic? Well, before you decide, check out this next thing Rango does that Disney doesn't. During the first scenes of Raya and the Last Dragon, we see Raya riding on her pet tuk-tuk across a desert. Watch this closely. We see Raya move across wide golden sand dunes that stretch into the horizon. The sunlight hits the sand in smooth waves of orange, and the camera glides cleanly around her, floating through the air as she speeds forward, passing rocky shapes that sit neatly in the background. It is actually a beautiful picture. But now, let's take a look at the scene where Rango first meets Beans in the desert. Rango had just had a really weird dream, but when he woke up, he was drowning. For someone who has been looking for water, this quickly turned into a blessing. Except it doesn't last because as soon as the water hits the ground, it dries up before Rango can take a scoop. In his desperate attempt to get some water, he grabs the boots of another animal, only for his eyes to meet up with the double-barreled shotgun of a female desert iguana. When Rango finally gets up, we get this epic shot.
No, ma'am, I don't.
Who are you?
Notice how the camera sits low, almost at ground level, like someone is actually standing there holding it. The sun burns the frame. Parts of the image wash out, and heat haze bends the horizon. Beans raises her shotgun in a tense, uneven motion while Rango freezes in place. Now, when you go back to that Raya shot again, you start to notice that. Though it might look great, it also looks like a trip through a painted desert. In contrast, Rango looks like a moment caught by a real camera under a real sun. Raya and the Last Dragon builds its desert with smooth motion and clean framing. The camera floats freely, turning and drifting without struggle. Every shot looks carefully balanced, like the world was arranged for the viewer's eye. This approach gives the desert a polished beauty that stays consistent from every angle. This style appears in many Disney films, but Rango moves in a very different direction from the first frame. The desert in Rango carries rough edges and uneven light. The camera shakes slightly as Beans steps into frame, then settles as tension builds between the characters. The sunlight seems to hit the lens and spill into bright flares that block parts of the image. The result makes the desert look like it was filmed in real time, rather than built inside a computer.
I'm still working on it.
But even more interesting is that to make the characters move with authentic weight and genuine human chemistry, the creative team used a technique called a motion capture. You see, instead of recording voices separately in isolation, the actors performed together on stage with props, costumes, and physical blocking. Johnny Depp and the rest of the cast moved through scenes like they were inside a live set.
Too late.
No, it's not too late. It's not too late. I'm blending. Watch me blend. I'm a blender.
Their gestures, pauses, and reactions were recorded in motion and used to guide the animation. This method creates movement that carries small human habits, like slight hesitations in posture or uneven weight shifts when someone turns quickly. In contrast, Disney films rely on what comes from a virtual camera system. This camera can move anywhere at any speed, through any space, without limits. It creates smooth crane shots that glide through impossible angles. Lighting stays clean and even because the system controls every source perfectly. But Rango takes a different path by adding limits back into the image. Roger Deakins, a legendary cinematographer known for live-action films like True Grit, guided the visual design. His influence pushed the team to think like they were shooting in the real world, instead of building a digital space. That mindset shaped how light behaves in every shot. The desert in Rango carries harsh exposure. The sun burns parts of the frame so strongly that details disappear into white light. Shadows cut across characters in sharp contrast, leaving parts of faces dark while others sit under intense brightness. The camera also behaves as if it is using real lenses. There are moments where the image bends slightly at the edges, or where light spreads in a soft glow across the screen when it hits the lens directly. These imperfections match what happens when filming outdoors in extreme heat. This approach creates an interesting result where a fully animated world begins to act like a documentary filmed on location. The movement of characters, the behavior of light, and the imperfections in the image all combine to create something that feels captured instead of constructed. Disney builds worlds that move with freedom. The camera floats as if it exists outside the space, choosing the best possible angle at every moment. Rango seems to place the camera inside the space, bound by dust, heat, and optical limits that shape every frame. One creates a perfect window into a world. The other creates the sense that someone stood inside that world with a camera and tried to hold steady while everything around them moved. But this goes beyond the visuals because when you look closely into Rango's story, something weird begins to appear, especially when you compare it to Disney movies. During the early part of Rango, the story already twists the normal hero's journey that Disney usually follows. In a Disney setup like The Lion King, Simba starts in a safe place, loses his father Mufasa, runs away, and then slowly grows into strength through time and guidance. In Moana, Moana hears the call from her island, takes the boat by choice, meets Maui, learns skill after skill, and then returns home ready to lead. Every step comes from growth that builds in a straight line. However, Rango uses a different path from the very first moment. He starts as a pet chameleon inside a glass tank, acting out roles with plastic toys. He performs identity before he even has one. Then the crash happens, and he ends up alone in the Mojave Desert. No mentor is guiding him, and no clear mission is forming inside his mind. That alone sets a different base for the entire journey. In Disney structure, the hero usually gains early progress through learning. Hercules trains with Philoctetes and builds strength through repetition. Mulan trains with the army, learning discipline and combat step by step. Even mistakes in those stories build real skill. Rango never follows that path. His early survival in dirt comes from pure accident wrapped in performance. When he arrives in dirt, he steps into the gas can saloon and immediately builds a fake identity. This moment replaces training with performance. Instead of learning how to be a hero, he invents one on the spot. That invention becomes the base of his entire rise. However, the key break from Disney structure begins when luck takes over his reputation. Rango survives the first hawk attack by luck, and when he kills the hawk, it was equally by luck. Disney heroes usually never build a reputation through this kind of randomness. Simba defeats Scar only after fully returning to his identity as king and choosing responsibility. Mulan defeats Shan Yu through planning, courage, and skills that she actually learned during training. In Hercules, strength comes after tests that build real ability. Their victories match their growth, but Rango's rise breaks that rule completely. The canyon chase makes it even louder. He is thrown, pulled, dropped, and pushed through chaos. At every moment where control disappears, something in the environment saves him. A rope catches him, a bat knocks him in the right direction, and he catches dynamite, which he uses for his benefit. These moments stack into a false image of control, and they are where the story builds its main idea about hero structure. In Disney storytelling, competence comes first, then recognition follows. In Rango, recognition comes first, then competence has to be built under pressure. The town of Dirt treats him like a real sheriff because they only see outcomes. They see a dead hawk, a collapsing tower, they see him surviving gunfights, and assume skill. This belief gives Rango authority he never earned. That is the core distortion. Disney hero arcs usually include a mentor stage where guidance shapes the hero. Rafiki guides Simba toward acceptance of his past, and Grandmother Tala guides Moana toward her purpose. Rango receives no structured mentor at this stage. But of course, the system begins to collapse when luck disappears. Rattlesnake Jake enters as the first force in the story that removes accident from the equation. During the confrontation, Jake gives Rango a clean chance to act without ricochets, falling objects, or random interference, and Rango freezes. The pattern that carried him through earlier events disappears, and the town sees it clearly. The hero they believed in fails when luck leaves the room. This moment breaks the Disney style of heroic progression. In Disney stories, failure at this stage usually still keeps the hero's core identity intact. Here, identity itself is ripped into shreds. Rango admits his entire story was made up, and the public persona falls apart in front of everyone.
Who are you?
The next stage rebuilds him in a way Disney does not use. Instead of returning to a pre-written destiny, Rango meets the spirit of the West, a figure shaped like a Western gunslinger. The spirit delivers a simple idea: no one walks away from their story. This moment replaces destiny with responsibility. The hero role becomes something Rango must choose, rather than what he was meant to unlock. From here, Rango rebuilds competence through planning. He studies the water problem, learns the truth about the mayor's control, and forms a strategy with the hill people. The final conflict uses coordination, timing, and deception. No lucky ricochets decide the outcome because this time, Rango wins through structured action.
Thirsty, brother?
Even the final rescue inside the glass vault carries a different meaning. Beans choking on the bullet and breaking the glass still uses chance, but it comes after Rango has already committed to action with full intent. The structure clicks in a very different place from Disney hero arcs. Disney builds heroes through steady growth and guided transformation. Rango builds a hero through an accident, exposes that accident as a fraud, and then forces real competence through pressure after luck disappears. But then again, whether you prefer Rango's style is still up to you. However, chances are you will agree entirely with this next thing that the movie does that Disney is afraid of doing. Kids usually sit in front of movies with wide eyes, and most of the time they get a world that bends itself into soft shapes. Even when danger shows up, it often comes with a safety net underneath it. Modern Disney films in recent years, like Raya and the Last Dragon, Strange World, and Wish, try to address big ideas about war, nature, and control, but they wrap those ideas in clean answers that arrive too quickly and are executed poorly. However, Rango steps into a different lane, treating its audience like they can sit with confusion, pressure, and real consequences, then figure things out as the story unfolds. The first thing that stands out is how these stories treat problem solving. In Raya and the Last Dragon, Kumandra sits under a long history of broken trust. Basically, the entire premise is about centuries of brutal geopolitical warfare, tribal factionalism, and deep-seated human malice that literally spawned a world-eating plague called the Droon. It's an incredibly dark, mature setup. But how does Disney resolve a literal Cold War built on generational trauma? By just telling everyone to trust each other.
Sue's gone, Raya. We don't have her magic.
It's not about her magic, it's about trust.
What?
It reduces a complex lesson on systemic conflict into a hollow, bubble-wrapped resolution. Imagine trying that out in the real world. Just trust each other, guys. It will all work out. Apart from this, Rango also deals with a dying world plagued by artificial scarcity in the town of Dirt, but it solves its water crisis through physical strategy, breaking through actual pipeline infrastructure, and forming a calculated, gritty alliance with Balthasar and his bank-robbing underground clan. Rango respects kids enough to show that real-world problems require systemic, ugly solutions, rather than just wishful thinking. Strange World also builds a world centered on collapse, with a giant living creature serving as the foundation of Avalonia. The energy crisis comes from harvesting that creature, and the family travels through a vast underground ecosystem filled with danger. The scale looks huge, but the danger stays visually safe. The characters move through mild attacks and escape with very little lasting damage. Even when the creature's body reacts to harm, the tone stays light, almost like a ride through a theme park. But when Rango drops you into a harsh environment, you encounter the blistering heat and the physical weight of survival. Roadkill, an armadillo, is literally flattened and split in half by a truck tire on screen, exposing his flat, tire-tracked body as he dryly discusses his own mortality.
He waits for me.
What? Who?
The spirit of the West, amigo.
Characters carry loaded firearms, and a town citizen bank manager, Mr. Merrimack, is shown dead from drowning inside a water bottle. Then there are the mariachi owls, who sing about Rango's impending death, while the threat of starvation remains tangible. The contrast with Disney becomes even clearer when analyzing the movie Wish. The story explores a population willingly giving their deepest desires to King Magnifico in exchange for artificial safety, a clear lesson about autocratic control, perfectly mirroring how dictators frame themselves as saviors. But halfway through the story, the writing completely ruins the lesson. The ruler turns into a cartoonish bad guy who laughs with green magic and locks people in mirrors, allowing a teenager named Asha to defeat him with a catchy pop song. However, Rango handles greed with absolute maturity through Mayor Tortoise John. He remains a polite, chilling boss who uses human survival to make money, manipulating water rights and buying up cheap land from desperate citizens. He simply uses economic chokeholds and the chilling rule that controlling water means controlling everything. By refusing to sugarcoat these mechanics of greed and survival, Rango respects the intelligence of its audience, both kids and adults. The script includes excess smoking, realistic dialogue, and mild profanity like hell and damn, honoring the history of classic Western filmmaking. Also, the humor avoids standard cartoon safety, introducing jokes about enlarged prostates, mammograms, and characters looking at private parts. The movie trusts kids to look at an intentionally ugly world where the citizens of Dirt look mangy, diseased, and physically deformed.
Well, you got a little something in your eye there.
Well, that there's conjunctivitis, sir. It's hereditary.
A rabbit doctor operates with a missing ear. A bird walks around with an arrow shot directly through its skull, and Rattlesnake Jake carries a functional Gatling gun on his tail, creating an uncompromised image of danger. Most importantly, the film trusts its viewers to sit with heavy psychological pain. It explores profound loneliness, sadness, and complete ego death. When Rango's web of lies collapses, he walks blindly onto a busy highway, actively stepping into high-speed traffic in a sequenced frame as a surreal near-death experience. The narrative touches upon deep spiritual ideas, presenting an intimidating villain who crawled straight out of hell, and a mystical guide known as the Spirit of the West. When modern Disney movies touch upon adult themes, they immediately run away into corporate safety nets, magic spells, and neat moral shortcuts. They show zero trust in the ability of kids to handle a world that is structurally broken. But Rango gives its audience a mirror to reality, proving that children's entertainment can achieve legendary status by trusting its viewers to face the raw mechanics of the world. Rango shows what happens when a story trusts chaos, pressure, and consequence to shape its hero. That brings us back to something just as strange in a different corner of animation: how Pixar builds entire worlds and histories without ever laying them out clearly on screen. If that kind of storytelling pulls your curiosity, this video goes straight into it.